Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope all is well with you. Okay, well, so in this episode, I thought I'd try to say something about the ancient Greek philosopher and proto-scientist Empedocles and his view on love. And for those of you who don't know, Empedocles belonged to a group of thinkers called the pre-Socratics, thinkers active between the 6th and 5th century BC. I guess what I want to try to get across here is that in a strange way, even though Empedocles might seem to say some very odd things about love, I do think that it could be made relevant for our time. Okay, but before I get to him specifically, to start, let's look at what some of the earlier pre-Socratics were trying to say. So essentially what they were trying to argue was that the universe and all of its objects were generated out of one fundamental kind of stuff. Some of them said that the one thing was water, others said it was air, and so on. Now, Empedocles, who comes a bit later, said that the cosmos was actually formed not of one thing, but of several equally ultimate stuffs. More specifically, he thought that the world was composed of equal amounts of air and fire and earth and water. And actually, when you think about it, it's not an unreasonable guess. I mean, if you were living in coastal Sicily at the time, what would you be seeing? Well, you'd be seeing the earth below you and the sea at its edge and the air above, and of course, that great fireball in the sky. Anyway, so those four things were the basic cosmic constituents for him. Actually, Empedocles called them something specific. He called them the roots, and he took them to be, uncreated, indestructible, and unchangeable, so that they can't be transformed into other stuff. Now, you might be thinking, if that's all that exists, these four things, then how do we explain all of the diversity of objects in the world around us and all the changes that we see too? Well, Empedocles has an answer. It's true that only the roots are real, but he says that they mix together. And when this happens, that's how we get particular mixtures like gold and particular objects like, say, dogs. And actually, Empedocles got even more specific in his explanation here. He said that what accounts for the dissimilarity between the various objects that we see is that they have differing proportions of those four basic roots. So, for example, a bone is what it is and not something else because it's made up of precisely 4 parts fire, 2 parts water, and 2 parts earth. Now, when you think about it, this is pretty amazing, isn't it? I mean, he's not far from modern chemistry here, which says, for example, that water is 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. Okay, so far I've just been sort of setting the table, but now I want to get to the main course, the really cool stuff. So the other question that we got to ask is, what exactly is responsible for the mixing and the separating of these 4 basic roots or elements? I mean, like I said, Empedocles thought that the basic material stuff itself was completely inert and incapable of moving itself. So again, what makes the material world move around the way that it does? What makes it mix and separate? Well, it turns out that this is actually the work of 2 forces or powers, namely love and hate. So what do they do? How does this work exactly? Well, it turns out that love is what mixes all 4 roots, air, earth, fire, water, together, while hate keeps them apart. Maybe another way of putting this is that the force of love is the attraction between dissimilar things, and the force of hate is the attraction of similar things, of like to like. Okay, now one thing we shouldn't do though is to think of love and hate here as something like purely mechanical forces, like the force of gravity, for example. No, I mean, after all, we have to keep in mind that Empedocles gave the forces mythological names. I mean, the force of love, for instance, he calls Aphrodite, famously, of course, the goddess of love and beauty and sexuality. And so what I think is going on here is that Empedocles, when he's thinking of this large cosmic force, is sort of thinking of it as the same principle that produces sexual desire in a human being or a person. I mean, think about it. What's going on when we, as human beings, love? Well, love involves being attracted to someone different and wanting to merge with them to create something new, right? So really, for Empedocles, the macrocosm and the microcosm are governed by the same force. In other words, the same cosmological principles that govern the cosmos govern our souls. Anyway, okay, so let's get back for a second to the forces of love and hate at work in the cosmos. So what's going on when the universe is governed by hate? Well, in a universe governed by hate, everything is separated from what it is not. Everything is grouping together with its own kind. So really then, the difference between a universe governed by love and a universe governed by hate is one between a world characterized by inclusivity on the one hand and a world characterized by exclusivity on the other. Or to put it another way, maybe it's the difference between a world that's marked by aggregation versus one that's marked by separation. Now, even though history is a cycle in which sometimes love is dominant and sometimes hate, for Empedocles, I think it's pretty clear which he thinks is better. It's when the whole is in a unity. That's what Empedocles calls the divine. That's what he calls God. Anyway, so what's the lesson here for us today? Well, I don't know, but we might say that whatever love is, it's definitely not huddling up with yourself and your kind in your own little exclusive corner of the universe, right? It's not building more and more borders and more walls everywhere. It's not retreating back behind the safety of a computer screen. It's not living inside of an echo chamber, purged of all otherness, hearing and seeing exactly what you want to. It's not sacrificing real-life encounters marked by the unpredictable and the different to the safety and certainty of algorithmic compatibility. No. Love begins by getting out there amongst what is not you and mixing things up. It begins by opening ourselves back up to the other and potentially being struck by something, like fire to earth. Bye for now.